Hello. Hello. Mm, let's see. Yes. Stream is on. The mic is on as well. Hello. Yes. And I got some tea. Um, mint tea this time. No ginger tea. I would have preferred like a ginger tea right now. A little bit of ginger, not like a little bit, just some ginger and a little bit of like a lemon in it. Very nice, very nice. It's just cold. The weather today. It's more a ginger tea kind of weather instead of like a mint tea. Mint tea is more for the summer, if you ask me. Like a mint tea is a summer tea, but I still have like a whole bunch of mint in the fridge. So would be a waste to throw it away. And the ginger, I will use that in a salad. Yes, ginger in the salad. You heard me right. I know it's mad. Mm, you know what? Let's put on some music. Hello. Well, before I do that, let's actually. Do I want to change that? Can I? Let's do this. Copy. Go back here. Actually, paste reference. About 60 miles. Yes, fine. Studio mode. There you go. That's fucked up. I need to fix that. I wanted to show like the track that I'm playing. It's kind of nice, for the artist when you show which track is playing and who it's from. And I think that's also something that you actually need to do. But I can't be bothered by making a background right now and like a fancy scrolling text. So this will do. It's getting crowded a little bit with the Ko-Fi. Just testing stuff out, man. Just leave me alone. Leave me alone. No, don't leave me alone. It's fine. Just... It is what it is. So that's on game development. That's fine. We don't have to select a category. Let's create a Zelda clone. Because that's what we're doing. Yes. Let's see. Do I need to do this? Maybe. Let's go over here. Let's go to the Twitch. Am I gonna do that? We'll switch to construct soon. Yeah. I'm thinking. Right, I need to set something up. I think the music volume is fine. It was maybe a little bit too quiet yesterday. But it's good background noise. That's the purpose of having like the background noise. So it shouldn't be louder than this, I think. It's fine. There you go. Make a Zelda clone. Yeah, Zelda clone. I look like doing so. It's fine. There we go. Let's see. Let's switch to this, and let's actually show what we have. Hi, by the way. I said hi. Look, listen. This is just gonna be a chill stream. Gonna continue with the project from yesterday. The the Construct 2 thing with the Zelda. What we're gonna do, just go over briefly what we did yesterday, and then maybe find out like what we need to do for, you know, what we're gonna do during the stream, or maybe find out what the priority right now is. I don't know. Maybe got some ideas, and maybe some new ideas will pop up. I was thinking I should take some notes. I like taking down notes, like actual pen and paper. So I might have to do that. Got some paper over there. Or maybe get like a notepad out just to show like the tasks that are still like on the to-do list. You know what? We might do that later in just an actual notepad on the PC, because at some point we actually need to use at some point we might use the notepad as well for JSON files or XML stuff. Not right now though, because that will complicate a couple of things, but we need to make that move. So let's just show first what we actually have, because that's important. Let's full screen this for now. You know, that's kind of nice, you know, making that full screen button. That's the first thing that we actually did. Yes. I'm gonna turn up the volume on my end a little bit. You know what? Let's bump it up to 40. I know it wasn't 30, the music, but this should be fine. So what we have here, I actually last night I was thinking, well, I made that text for debug to show which area we are in, and we're gonna use the text also for some other stuff. So I placed the text there, I made that global UI thing. But I completely forgot to actually use the text afterwards. So we might just do that. Just have some like data in that that might be you know, valuable during the game, and probably just show some debugging stuff like location, CPU, just so that we can keep track of that. Area, maybe like the health stuff, if when we build that, just have that in a text file, and that keeps updated. So we do have like the yellow block here, that's our spawn point for at the start. So we made like a spawn thing yesterday. So once we boot up the game, it will actually spawn us at a spawn point. And now we have some items here. We don't have an inventory. We can check it in the debug mode in the dictionary. But I think these are just like, I think one of the items is like poo-poo. The other is a potion and some other random stuff, and like a bow. That's all stored in a dictionary. So we can pick up items. And now we have like the black squares with the red border. Those are trigger points to a new area. So when we move in there, that one on the left tells us that we need to go to area 1 and then spot 0, and the other spot in the right corner is spot 1. So when we move here, we spawn on the left. So after the transition, the spawn, that trigger point, all of them are on a cooldown so that we don't get stuck in a loop. So we can move over it for a little bit, and after 3 seconds it's enabled, which is nice. And then when we move in here, we get spawned on that point. And then, you know, there's another poo-poo item there in the corner. Let's move the mic a little bit. Let me know if the mic volume is fine. And I'm trying out to move the mic a little bit away from my face instead of it covering everything. I know the volume is maybe a little bit lower, but you know, it is what it is. I can't have it like in my face right now because I need to look at my keyboard and also like the drawing tablet, because yeah, we are drawing some stuff out. So still the text is there because it's a global UI. When we move here, you know, everything is like there. So, you know, it's kind of nice that we are able to do this. Why did I, well, I will show that in the drawing, but one of the things that we actually need to fix right now is that it's probably very clear is that once we pick up an item, there are some items we have made some item types, or you know, have the ability to make some item types. So we have like, and that's I was thinking about the stream yesterday still, like how to, like what kind of naming convention to use for the types. But we have items that you only pick up once, something like a bow in a Zelda. You only pick it up once, and that's maybe like more an equipable, or like a equipable item. Yeah, maybe an active item. At some point we will find a proper name, because we also have like other items that are more about the coins and like health. Items that will probably have like a cooldown and then disappear if you don't, if you're not fast enough. Like items that are maybe mostly dropped by enemies. Maybe that's the distinction, like world items and enemy items. But maybe that's a good naming, or like a good differentiator, like something like a world. But then again, that's funny. Like an enemy is also in the world, so still you need to explain, well, no, if you defeat an enemy, it spawns an item, or it could spawn an item, and it's still in that world. You know, at some point we will figure it out. But we have items that are just, you know, they're finite. Maybe that's it. Finite or infinite, right? That's finite is like there's a limited amount of those type of items. Now we have just, you can always get those items, like money, for example, like a currency. Finite, you know, that would be somewhat like a good way to maybe describe it. It's not something that we hey, to pay me, how are you? It's not something that we need to it's good to think about it, because maybe we get like other items as well. But the finite and infinite, I'm doing good. I'm chilling out, enjoying the vacation, and try to make something again. It's been a while since I made something and did some creative work, and I'm just trying to get in the mood to make some stuff. And that's why I thought like, hey, let's just stream making a game. We did that before, like the chicken game, but that was chaos. I just want to chill out, man. I just want to chill out. So let's, that is actually what we have now. So the text and the items are important, like the text for the debug, and the items is, you know, we need to make sure that the items don't spawn. Like the finite items shouldn't spawn anymore after picking them up. And the items like rupees should just stay on the level. And normally they wouldn't be on a level like this, because they would be they would spawn after you killed probably like an enemy, or you broke like a bottle, you know, those type of items. Spawnable, unspawnable, spawnable items. Items that are just there, but a bow might also spawn. We didn't know like how you get a bow. We don't even know if there's a bow. Right. So that is what we have right now. So we can move through the areas, and I will actually show now why we did it like that. Look at this drawing. It's all making sense right now. It is kind of difficult to look at. Let's move this. So what we're doing right now is we are making something else than the overworld in Zelda. Maybe we will change that later on, but what we're doing is we're building like an hub area, and an hub area for now will consist of a grid 8x8. So we have quite a lot of screens, 64 screens, you know, sections in like an hub area, and we can make that smaller or bigger, but that's what we will deal with right now. So let's just call the screen that we just saw where we spawn is maybe the hub. That's just the center, and then from there we can go to other areas. And I was actually thinking, once you go to like an area, you only need one like entry, one exit to that area, and from that other area to go back to the other one. But what the thing that's let's use the thing that's over here. I was thinking it might be nice to have like that functionality to have the ability to make multiple exit points, so that maybe in area 2, I don't know, let's say area 2 is actually divided, and you need to enter from one point and then do something there, and then maybe you need to actually have an item to go to another one. So what we could do now with having like those multiple area transition triggers, let's call them that we could do that you spawn in one point in area 2, and if you take the other one, you spawn somewhere else. I don't know. It's kind of nice to have that, and you can play around with that. I think we should also be able to make something that bridges between like area 2 and 1. And in that case, you also need to have like multiple access points from, you know, more points that say, oh, you can either spawn here and here. So we're building that. I haven't figured out if we're gonna stick to like the single screen, because that's how it all started out. Like, hey, you have like a single screen, and then you have like the camera movement. Once you go past like the border of the screen, it kind of transfers to the other screen. I think we'll just make a big place and then more like a free-flowing camera, just to that will make it a lot easier. It will not feel as a NES game maybe, but making single screens is maybe a little bit of a hassle. It will make things more complicated. And yesterday I was not kidding with the goal of making this prototype and be done with it in a month, or at least after a month review it. So who are you as a main character? That's a good question to pay me. I am solely focusing right now on building the functionality of a Zelda-like game. I do have some themes, some ideas on who you are. I have 3 different teams that we could in the end do, but I'm solely focusing on the little squares and to make it a Halloween version. I got some ideas for a Halloween type of game. So it's done by then. Well, when is Halloween? Halloween is next week, isn't it? It feels like it's next week. That's not. I'm not a wizard. I'm not Harry Potter. That's why you said Christmas. That's why I said Christmas. Oh, make it Halloween version or Christmas. Ah, right there. But Christmas is like 2 months later. That's already like extending our deadline. We don't have that budget. We will leave it for now and see how far we get, because the thing that I don't want to do, and make a Christmas Zelda game 1 month for the prototype and 1 month for PR. Yes, that's how you do it. We're gonna focus on the functionality, and then we're gonna decide on a theme, because a theme will also determine, you know, the pixel art. I said I'm gonna make pixel art, and if, you know, game development, it always goes as if you have planned it. You know, make the pixel art for this game in the end. But what I want to do is just solely focus on this right now. Although there's an issue. Sometimes you want to use the animations for enemies or for the player to actually trigger some stuff. There's an whole thing. It's a whole thing. So what I think, where's my mouse again? I keep losing my mouse. I should use a pen. There we go. Happy face. So what I will do, it's probably gonna be, I could make a simple version for the item issue that we have right now. have like an item checker at the start of a layout so that the items don't reappear again. At some point we do need to make like an inventory where we can select stuff. That's gonna be, oh, that's gonna be a hell. It's gonna be fun though. It's fun, but it's gonna be hell. That's gonna be intense. So I will probably, try to push it away a little bit. But at least make sure that the items disappear when we pick them up and don't. It doesn't reappear when we move back to that area again. The other thing that I want to do is we could maybe make a nice transition, like what I said yesterday, that there's like a fade in and a fade out once you go on like a trigger, and then it's not like instant. I think that shouldn't be instant because that always feels a little bit like weird. And why I think it feels weird is you don't give the player like any time to think about like what's happening, and it's like bam, you're in a new area. It's kind of nice if it's so fast, but also it might be a little bit like disorienting, to some extent. So maybe we built like the fade in stuff, and we also need to do some work for the player, make some like items like the health and the currency, just have something to work with in the beginning. And once that is done, the game is complete. Yes, except for the enemies, so and the bosses and on all the dungeons and all the artwork and the sounds and the PR. Easy. Everybody can do it. Where's my mouse again? I'm an idiot. Can I make a pixel art thing for you too? Sure. As long as it is not TOS, bad news. I'm looking for my mouse on OBS, but I'm actually looking on the capture window. My mouse is actually on that monitor, but I'm seeing a mouse move on that monitor, and I think, oh, that's my mouse. That's not my mouse. My mouse is there. I got like a weird setup, man. It's like a monitor there, and then below it. So I need to loop around with the mouse. That reminds you. Oh, where's my mouse? Oh, you lost the game. Thank you. I lost the game as well. Fantastic. Let's move over there. Do we need the drawing? Well, I will just leave it on. I will just leave it on. Let me know if the music is fine. If it's not too loud. I keep changing my music, the volume on my end. Music is perfect. Good. Let's have a chill stream. So the items, let's quickly show that what actually happens when we pick up an item. Are you using TuneUp for music? No, I'm using... I just installed it. Spot? No. Not Tuna. Something else that just puts it in a text file. Should I be using something else? So the thing that we have right now is actually, it was a small thing, but we made 2 inventories. We will change this name as well once we have like the proper names for the inventory types. Tuna and Spotify built in on OBS. Snip? Yes, Snip. I use Snip. Is that bad? Is Snip bad? I kind of disliked it because it's installed something on a quick bar. You use Snip for years. So when we pick up like a regular item, it will just populate that dictionary there. So we have like 3 potions and poo and key. Right. And I will say also, yes, that's the thing that we need to do. Let's just move this over here so that we have like the game area as well. Yesterday I was thinking, well, we probably don't need this anymore, but we actually do need it. And I will just show you why we actually need it. Because right now, You hated that you have to run it. Right, yes, me too. I'll look into tuna. The thing is, now we only have like the functionality to add items, but we can't remove items, and that's something that we need to do, mostly for the like the consumable stuff. So it's actually good that it's set up like this, because we do need to have something like to add or like remove an item. So I'm glad that we didn't actually delete this, but we need it, and that also means we need to change this to you know, like 1, and the same goes for this one as well, because what's an inventory if you can't add or remove something? And it does mean though that we need to have like an add over there and the item active. Like those names will change later. So we have like an add and a remove, and now it should also work as well. Those magical words, it should work. Just add, and you know, simply like the remove would be to remove the amount when we use it. What we will do though, at some point, now we're just adding 1, and I said it yesterday, but I might add a comment. For example, in Zelda, you have like the bomb bags, or you have different kind of rupees that add more to a certain value. At some point, we're not gonna add. We will send out the name, but the name here, it should check what actually should be added to it and what type of item it actually is. So it's not solely dependent on the name of that item, but we need to pull that data from somewhere. We'll probably do that like an XML file add amount to add. Again, like the XML, I think it might be an XML. We're gonna make something in a text file that actually says like, hey, this item or this item name is about this item. Let's say bomb. Let's say you have an item name called bomb bag, and then we need to give that item. Well, we need to say it's actually a bomb, and then also add to that like the amount. And we can make something very nice where you can say, oh, you know, it's this amount, and maybe we have something like a shop. Also in that list, we could say, well, if you're buying this item, it costs this much, and if you sell it, you will get this amount of currency. So we're gonna build something like that later on, not during this stream, because I need to set up something before I actually do that, and I will probably do that off stream because it's a little bit more complicated. But we will change this later on based on that stuff, and we might have to change this as well, like removing something. We probably need to I'll just make it like a parameter. We need to check maybe like check amount, like before we actually remove something, check the amount. When we need to be able to pull the data, like, hey, use a bow needs an arrow. Do I actually have like arrows to use? I'm just gonna use the Zelda stuff, but we will be able to translate that to other items. But you know, just the functionality. We need to pull the data also, like, hey, how many arrows do you have, so that the item function will be able to tell us that, like, do you actually own it? Do you actually have it? And also, do you sell something? Like, do you actually have that amount? So this will probably get changed. I won't stop saying that, because that's just part of the game. I won't stop saying, well, We will probably change this later. Once we build like more and more, we will change everything. We'll change everything. And everything needs to adapt to what we're doing, right? If that makes any sense. Let's move this one over here as well. Every tab that starts with ES is just the event sheet. We also have like the object layout for all the objects that needs to be spawned within the game. Items will get spawned in a different way as well. You know what? Ah, shit. Maybe I should make an item spawner. I kind of like the idea of item spawners instead of like placing the items on the screen and in the layout. I won't forget that. I will probably forget it. The item spawner will check. It's fine. So what I want to do, this should also be maybe in a function during the initialize, but we are not doing that now because of like the wait. You know what? Let's disable the wait. I place the wait there so that it doesn't trigger the initialize like from the get-go, but using wait, my understanding is it's best to avoid using the wait as much as possible. But let's just move this one to the initialize, because that's something that we call from the beginning of the game. And that will take care of like all the basic stuff that needs to happen when we start on the new layout. So what happens there is like the area transitions are all disabled, so we don't like trigger it again, you know, otherwise we will get stuck in a loop. When the game state is like start, that's just like a pure, this is like a new game, or you just booted it up. It will spawn a player at the spawn point, that's the like the yellow thing over here, and then it will say the game state is actually active. This one initialize happen. This one happens when the game state is actually like an area transition. Once we move from one area to another, and then that will make sure that we spawn like on a area transition, like, and we send like the X and Y. So let's well, we have this disabled, so let's see if the game doesn't get fucked up. Is this fine over here? It should be fine. So now we don't have to wait, which is probably good. Let's debug it again. And now we move here. See, it's instant, and that's good. It doesn't seem to break. You know, I don't like how instant it is. So that's why I probably want to build like a fade in and a fade out. Just a quick one, or something that shows you that, hey, you're going to like a new area. And once you get to a new area, like maybe the text of the new area pops up, and that would be nice. So this is fine. We can remove this. Wait will sometimes fuck up functions, or often fuck up functions. If I put like a wait within a function, like over here, it will forget. Yes, this is a good example. Like wait will fuck you up if you call like the load area and you send this UID, and if I place a wait between these two things, it will forget the function parent one. It will forget it, and that will cause some issues, because sometimes you don't know like why is it not working, and it's probably due to like a wait. Not saying you can't use a wait, but wait is tricky. You don't use it too much. The items, let's just focus on the items now. So one simple thing that we could just do now for testing purposes is during the initialize also build something that we check each item that's the CB2. I think the CB2 will be the items that you only collect once, like a bow, a raft, something that goes into the inventory and you only collect it once. Once you picked up those items, it shouldn't spawn anymore. So for each of that item, it's the 4 items like a raft. Just for now, put a little note in it. For each item like a raft, we need to come up with a better name. We want to check probably the dictionary 1 if it has the key, because it's now set up. Once you have the key, you have picked it up. We could also do it differently because we might populate yes, let's just do this. The name, yes, is it equal to 1? So here we will check in the start of the game, is item for all these items, like the items that you only pick up once, there's just one of them. We will check the inventory and check if we will check the key with that name of that item. If it's 1, that means we have picked it up. I like this way because we might just make a dictionary that already contains like all the names at some point, and otherwise we have to redo this again. And then simply what we could do is say item CB2 destroy. That should actually work. So inventory 1, we're gonna pick up like a bow. Now we go here, wait for a little bit. It's like 3 seconds right now. So item bow, it says 1, and then we move back here. We don't see the item anymore. Good, it's solved. I don't know why people say that game development is difficult. So that's done. Let's just see, because now if we move here and move back again, very flex, but okay, long. It's not a flex. I was being sarcastic, really. So the bow is gone, and I don't think you might see it for a small fraction of time, but you really have to. You don't even see it, but it would be nice to have like the fade in and fade out. Especially, we will probably won't spawn like any enemies when you go to like a new area and on the screen, because that would be tricky as hell. But yeah, the fade in and fade out, that's important. But at least we have like a basic setup. Make sure items don't respawn when picked up. It's the is it the finite? Do you write it like that? Finite, like singular, like there's no infinite amount but a finite amount. But a finite amount wouldn't say it's just 1. It could be like 100, but there's just 100. So again, that's not a good way to. Collectibles could be a finite, have a finite amount, not an infinite amount. Right? It's difficult, man, to come up with good names. It's difficult. So let's just remove that one. I don't like the uppercase N. So we have the area transition. I'm looking at my notes. The enemies, the player, the debug text. That's something that we need to that we need to deal with. The debug text. What we could do. This is not. the way how I would normally do it, like with the every tick. Could zoom in a little bit. That might be better. Why is it saying zoom there? Ready active layer. But that's the zoom for that. Yeah, let's just enlarge this a little bit for the stream. Like the every tick. It could be maybe could be. Sure, let's do it here. Every tick, that means like, hey, you update something every millisecond, so 60 times during a second, or depending on the screen. That's the tricky thing with constructs. It reacts a little bit differently when you do it on a 144 hertz monitor. But every tick, you don't want to do that for the text, but it's a debug text, so it's something that's not gonna stay there. It's not for the game itself, it's good for the testing right now. What we're gonna do, let's just do debug, and then I just like lowercase, man. And then debug text, and what we're gonna do, and actually see if this works. Do I need to do a new line first? I need to move my keyboard. New line, and what we want to do is location, and then add layout name. Just for now, let's see if this works. Don't want to be on a game UI. Let's leave it on. Debug, very good. That works. Yep, it's locked. And the text definitely could be a little bit smaller. 1.4. Good. Area 0. Now we move here. Area 1. Very good. It's done. Now, do I want... I might want to build a couple dictionaries as well. Well, no, let's call it game data. And let's just add one for the player data as well. See, the thing is, the dictionaries, I kind of like using those for the data that we need to store. Again, yesterday I was explaining about the global variables. And we could use that for like health stuff. But that will make it trickier later when we want to build a save file, and building it in the dictionary will make it much easier to actually store that info later on. And also, I kind of like it. It's yes. It's fine. It's fine. Inventory, what are we gonna do? Player data. Player, and how am I gonna do this? What I want to do, let's move this timer up there, because that's I could build the health, just make the key from the start, or initialize also something like for the player setup from the beginning, or just from here within the game. But this is already a little bit too crowded, and this is gonna list too many. This is already like a I don't know. This is gonna cause a problem, because we will have more game states later on. Player, let's just do this. we, yup, player, if it's empty, then make a couple of keys. And this is something that we will probably do when you boot up the game, like start a new game, or when you load a save file and then initialize, just start that up, check if it's there, yes or no. So we can use this later. Let's add a key, and that's just called health. We might change this later. Let's put the health on 100. Yes. Health. Do we have like a primary item? Let's just put in some keys that might be useful for later. Primary item. Item secondary. Yes, I'm already changing it because we're talking about an item, and now if it's an item primary or secondary. And I know it's probably, it shouldn't probably be lowercase in the beginning, but I kind of like that for readability. I don't care. I don't care, man. This is just like the A and B items that you also have, like I said, like just one item there and the other item like a bow and a bombs or whatever. So it's just two items that you can select and place in there. Just have like let's start out with the value of like it's empty, none. None, and then also do like the debug, just add this one and have something that says like HP, and then big play data that get health. Is that, oh, that's fine, that's fine. Item 3. I always think like people will be yelling like, oh my god, why are you doing like that? I don't know, man. I'm just doing what feels good, you know? What makes sense right now. Why would it say 0? Because we didn't do this. There you go. That's kind of nice. Have a little debug. Area 0, area 1. Pick this up. Go here. Just gonna use this one. Item is gone. Go there. Fine. And later this won't happen on the start. And we will probably do at least this one, which would happen on the start of like the layout of the main game. But the player like to initialize like building this on the start will probably happen in a loading screen if the game state is start or like a new game or something. Because now we have to check like, is it empty? And if it's empty, we haven't booted up the game properly. It will only do this once because we have these keys added to it. So it won't happen when we go to like a new area. Yes. So we do have that, like the items are gone. Do we need to build like the inventory? That's gonna be We do need to build it, but it might be a little bit like too much to actually do that right now. We could do it, but it is also a little bit like too much. Player on collision with items. I might move that. Let's leave it here. Let's move this up to there. Have the player and the functions below, and then maybe move this there. This might also be moved to the inventory, like right here. Passive and active in the inventory. That's actually to build the inventory as well. Yeah, what else do we need? Are we gonna build some like the item spawners? Maybe that's like an easy thing to do. Item spawner for the bow. And these items won't actually spawn, but those will spawn when you kill like an enemy. Like an enemy will drop. Maybe no. Why would a key be passive? Shit. Potion, poo poo, potion, potion. It should be money. Could be money. Just to test it out. The bow, like an active. I can call it like a collectible. Yeah. Game data. Have like an item spawner. And then in there say the name. Would that make any sense? To some extent. Would it actually be useful to have like a more a system, let's call it like a system level of trigger point that at the start of the game that thing will actually check if it should spawn something. We probably have to do that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. An item spawner. Like, why wouldn't we, like the bow, I'm just seeing like the bow on a stage, you can see the bow and you only have to pick it up. That bow would be then in the inventory, so it kind of has that same function, like it doesn't matter if there's like an item spawner. But an item spawner, would that be later useful when, let's say you kill like an enemy, you could make the enemy drop an item spawner and populate that with items that it should or could spawn, like it's randomized, and then you need that anyway. Fuck it, it will probably be useful to make like a simple item spawner thing. Yes. Yes. Let's build a spite. Yes. Let's build a nice spite. 16 by 16. And what kind of color do I want? I have a little bit of some purple. That is already purple. You're an idiot. Purple with a black. Nope. And then I have a fancy text in it that says this is not gonna work out. Item. Best pixel art. Itch. That's fine, because I will play this game on itch when it's all said and done. Item spawner. And then you would too. You would call it itch or place it on the itch when it's done. Type. Lay it on niche. Right. Ooh, I will place this on niche. Type. I feel like we might. I had this idea. Is random. Is random. What would that mean? I was thinking, well, if you have like an item spawner called like is random, check a bool. If it's like a randomized like item spawner, or if it just spawns like a singular item, like if this is dropped, it always spawns this thing. Nope, you're making it way too complicated. I'm just gonna call this item. Now we need to. I don't like having to fill out this thing to say this is gonna spawn a bow. Because if someone makes a typo, and with someone I mean I, and it doesn't work, that would be bad. For now, let's do it like that. Oh. See, there we have that problem. That's why we made this fancy layout. I need to make a grid. Why is that grid gone? Have the grid. Oh, there's a grid. Make it 8 by 8. Show grid, and then... Oh, I think I finally fixed that issue. That's nice. That was like the first hour of the stream yesterday. No. That's not true. So we do have like an item spawner. This one here. Main game. And initialize. I'm thinking. It's very hard to think. What I want to do is change this one to the item spawner. For each item spawner, check item spawner dot did I give it a name? Item is equal to what? 1. Replace. There you go. So that means I could actually destroy that one. For each item spawner, is it in there with 1? And we will probably make, yes, that's where that XML file will come in handy to actually pull the data. Like, is this an item that should respawn even though you have it already or not? We will add more checks to that thing later. So for now, we're building something that's usable for later, but we need to adjust it. Adjusted checks. So if it's 1, destroy. Else, it should item should spawn this and set the value name to bow. And well, the tricky thing though is right now that bow has like, that one has like an item type and it's placed in the other inventory. So I will just say, what name did I give? Active. I don't know if it would already say active when it spawns. Let's just set the type to active. That's also something that I would pull from that XML file later on. So now this is manual. I will add a comment, note, pull data from XML. Yes. So now the item spawner will check if that item is already in the inventory, if that key is already one, destroy, and this will change later depending on like the XML. Let's I only have to do that. So if we haven't picked it up yet, it means it needs to spawn it. It needs to spawn that item, and it should not spawn the item bow, but the item spawner dot item. And later on, I will just make this and then disable it from the get-go. See what we're gonna do. The items will just have a sprite, and we will just. Chances are we will simply spawn a single sprite and change that animation depending on the item. So we will change the animation to like, hey, to say the self.name, and now we have the correct animation. So we will have like a row of like items that we pick up, and we only have to add like an animation instead of like having to add a new sprite with that thing. Or we might spawn a sprite and then place it on the item spawner, but I will just do it for this and disable it now because we don't have the animation, so nothing will actually do, or even if I have it not disabled, it would work. But this is more like a reminder. Hey, we need to build something like that. Spawn sprite or change animation of sprite depending on item type. Item. Not the type. Item. We will probably spawn a sprite. Yes. That's the thing that I like about all of this. It's just like, to me it's a big puzzle. It's just finding out like how to do all of this. So it didn't spawn. Did it spawn something, or did it spawn? The item spawner didn't spawn an item though. I will destroy else. Yes, of course. Nope, back. We need to spawn that item. Item active. We'll change it. We'll change it later. We'll change it later. I will remove this. We probably don't need it anymore. So now we have the item thing. The item spawn is still there. We could actually destroy it, but we might keep it in there just to make sure nothing fucks up like later on. But if we do this and actually go back, it's destroyed. Because we did that. This is actually not even required to destroy it. We could leave the item spawner on there. Because we set those, and maybe we have like an item that could just respawn, but you can only hold one, but once you lose it, you could go back again and pick it up. I don't know. Maybe because like of a bug, it could be nice. Maybe don't delete the item spawner. Question mark. Maybe don't delete the item spawner. I don't know. For now, it works. So we have the item spawners. These items should just spawn from breakable stuff. Or at least that's my idea. You know, Zelda, you can break stuff. That spawns an item. Or enemies poop out items. So we need that. I don't want to mess around with the enemies right now. The enemies, why I don't want to do that, because then we have to deal with like the enemy behavior, and that's gonna be tricky as hell. So is there something else that's simple on the list? So let's see, where's my mouse? So we have a little list here. Inventory, enemies, item pickup, singular or multiple, health and currency. Health and currency, yeah. We do need to do some with that though. Especially shit, yeah, we do need that XML though. That's gonna open up and complicate some stuff like way more. We could also do it manually right now in a dictionary. I should have made the XML. Why I am hesitant on doing that right now, because you need to pull the data in some way, and that's gonna... I would have to check out the projects like on how I did it. I can't do it on the top of my head to set it up. I would have to check my other projects because it's somewhat complicated. Once it works, it's very nice, but it's kind of, for me, it's tricky to set up. So we might wait for that right now. Bosses, player, we have the health, the currency, health on display. We could just build something that, you know, for testing out, like that we get like damage. And we should maybe make something so that we can at least attack something or shoot a thing based on our direction. Because once we have something like just close range, I am determined. Again, we don't have a team, so we might have like a long range attack. Let's just say we will end up with a long range attack and a close range attack. And either if like the close range or the long range is primary, like that's the thing that you do over and over again. We can decide on that later, but we need to build something that we can at least attack something, because once we can attack something, we can attack like breakable objects, make breakable objects, make enemies, also kill enemies, and then from there on create like the spawning of the items. So maybe we need to delve in further in the player itself before we continue working on something else, because the other thing would be just making the other thing that we could also do is the dungeon, like have, that's basically another area transition where you just bump into like maybe a door and then you go into that place. And I was thinking about the Zelda 1, and we're just gonna use the Zelda 1 as a blueprint, and a dungeon there just is laid out on that 8x6 grid. What we might do is actually have a dungeon exist of like different levels. You know, I kind of like that with Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, and that will open up more possibilities. But would a change of a level, that wouldn't be much different than just the area transition. It's we don't necessarily need that. We don't necessarily need to build something crazy for that to happen. I'm checking the the drawing. So we have like the map. We got the hub and the area transition. Could make the simple like the fade in and fade out. Maybe we'll start with something small and then go to the player. I kind of want to have like an easy fade in and fade out just to see if that's like doable. And we do need some timing on that. Yeah, let's just build it. Let's just build it. Because that will impact the load in and load out as well. So what we will do, I'm just thinking of a fade in and fade out, just to black, fade out to black, and then have a fade in and then a fade out. Let's just insert a new object, and we're gonna use a tiled background, and a tiled background will be black. There you go, and it doesn't have to be that large right now because it's tileable. I don't like this song. There you go. I feel like I need a new playlist. So here we just have like the tileable background and the tiles. Very nice. And what we're gonna do from now, what would a good name be? Let's call it like this for now, and we'll delete that and move it over here. Just here. Because we're gonna spawn it and also remove it again when we don't need it. I don't want objects on the layout when we don't use them. So we got the transition. And doing the initialize function. I might make too many functions. Transition. Let's call that transition effect for now. And then have a parameter for the fade in. And a fade out. So once we do... once we just start on the game, it basically happens every time, right? Initialize on the start and just call the function. And it's gonna be a fade out. At some point I just need to well, no, I'm just gonna stick to this. Yes, just a lowercase net. I find this so much more readable than this stuff. I don't know why. Have a fade out from the beginning, and when the fade out happens, it fades out to the game. And what the system needs to do is create an object. It needs to create this screen. It will probably be placed. It will probably be placed on a UI or something else. Because it won't be placed on the middle ground, the MG one. Because once we move, the fade in won't move with us, so it needs to be on a layer that's not dealing with any parallax scrolling. So I could do it on the UI where the UI stuff happens, But I feel I might need to make a separate layer simply for that. Like, are we gonna build more stuff on top of the UI? Maybe. How would we top layer? Let's fuck. Let's for now top. See, that's the nice thing. We're just sticking to like area 0 and area 1 and maybe have like an area for the dungeon because that's all we need right now. And the tricky thing is like what we calculated yesterday. If we build like an overworld with the you know, the Zelda style overworld, we would end up with 128 screens, so that's a ton. And just imagine having to go into all those layers and rename that layer, the top layer, to something else if you already have like all those things set up. So from now, start small, make that work, and then decide on the name later and change it up. Yes, top layer, it's not good. It's not a good name. But we also need to build it here. I think that's kind of fun though. That's switching back and forth, like, okay, if I do this, and this is good, this is good, this is good, this might be a problem, this might also be a problem, and this might also be a problem, and then just go over that, like the pros and cons, like back and forth, back and forth. It's somewhat annoying, that process, but there's also, I think, a lot of fun to do. It's just, you know, it's a puzzle. So the top layer fade out is called from the initialization of the game function. The system needs to create an object, and that object is the transition screen, and it needs to spawn on the top layer, and it will probably yes, on 0 0. That's the top left. And now I need to check something. Yeah, the hotspot is on the top left, so that should be fine. Let's just see if it works. It doesn't do anything, it just spawns that single thing on top of everything else. That does mean we won't see the UI clearly during the start and while fading out, which is somewhat fine, but also maybe not good. But that depends on like how long the fade in and the fade out lasts. Let's just play. Let's close this one. There you go. Lovely. And what we need to do is set the size of the transition screen. We do need to turn off like the parallax. Completely forgot it. But the width would be probably for the viewport. We do know that the layout size or the window size is gonna be like 480 by 256, but chances are we might actually change that later on, but that doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter if we change that later on or now. The beauty of it is we're just building the functionality. So I might just be able to do, well, no, the layout. See, normally I would do the layout width, but the layout width is not. Now I could use the layout width because it's just a single screen. But what if we actually do make that 8 by 8 grid? And that's gonna be like a 248 by 248, if I'm correct, by pixel size. And if I do the layout width here, it would actually make that fade out thing 2000 pixels wide. So I need to do the viewport. Viewport left. Shit. Where is it? The window width. I think I need to mess around with the viewport because this is gonna be a little bit funky if I change. Because that works now, because I think if I resize now it will fuck up. No. Fuck, what? Okay, it's fine, I guess. Is it though? Eh. I might do with the viewport though. The viewport is simply what we see right now, so I think I could do viewport right and then minus viewport left, or the other way around to actually get like the correct pixel size of what we see right there. But it needs to cover that whole thing. And the other thing that we're gonna add though is a small behavior to it. And there's a fade in and a fade out already built in. There's already like a fade in and a fade out built in the behaviors. We're not gonna activate it from the start because we are just gonna build 2 of them though. We have a fade in and we have a fade out. Is this wise to do? Because I could also set the settings when we call it. Let's see if that works. Normally I would just do the fade, like a fade in and fade out, but let's see if I can actually do it without having to add another behavior. The less things that I need to add to it, the better it is. So this is the fade out. And then, you know, adding the behavior, we can set it here. Fade out time, set fade in time is 0 because it shouldn't fade in. It should start maybe after a second. And set wait time. Let's just have like it waits a little bit. Can I also change the destroy when the fade is done? Or maybe I could do it on fade in finished, on fade out finished. Yes, that's good. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna add a variable to the fade in and fade out, and I will call it action, so that I know that once we do it, set value action to fade in, fade out, and set that from the get-go. And once the fade out is finished, I'm just gonna I will probably have to do like the 2 behaviors. Compare action. Because what happens during a fade out and a fade in is different from each other, and I don't want it to mess up. So maybe having the actually checks in there is actually like good, so it doesn't mess up. Because if a fade out is finished and it's actually fading in, then something bad happened. But right now, it calls the fade out on the start. It should actually create it, set the action to fade out. It should set the size. Maybe set the size first. Set the action, fade in time, no fade in. It needs to be black. Fade out time, set the wait time. So it's gonna wait a little bit before it fades out. The fade out time is 1 second. Now we can actually, we need to remove that. And then it should actually occur. So once the fade out is finished and the action is actually fade out, destroy the thing. And what I'm just gonna do is this is not needed. That's just being fancy. Well, it didn't work because that was not the game. I also need to start the fade. I think that's it. Or restart. There you go. So whenever you get... See, it lasts a little bit too long though. We can change that. No, I think this is fine. And then we just have... That's gonna depend on the style of the game though. I think if it's slow paced, it would actually be nice when the fade actually fits the music and like the pacing of the game. So we will change this all probably later. Like if it's a quick pace game, we probably have just like a quick fade. But let's just do like a quick fade right now, because we do have a fade in before that once we enable the area transition, and it should be a little bit quicker, because if we do like a fade in and a fade out, and a wait time is 0.5 times 2, so it would be a total of like like a second. Kind of curious what happens when we transition to this and stand still on this. Will it actually transfer us? Oh, that's kind of interesting though. It is enabled now. Once we move and then do this, that's kind of good. That's kind of good. That's a good thing. Let's enlarge this a little bit to show what I was looking at. We set up the area transition that it's timed at the start, and those blocks are not enabled yet, and after a couple seconds they are enabled, just to prevent like the looping. The thing is, like if I'm a player and I move to a new screen and then don't touch it, I'm still stuck on there, and it would be weird. Like, oh, let's say I'll look at my phone and why am I back in this area again? Like you don't want that to happen. And it's nice that it's also not being triggered right now, because we're standing on it. We do have some sort of collision, but we're basically overlapping it, so we can move away and then touch it again. That's kind of good. That's kind of good. So I do think if that area is so small, we could even remove that timer or lessen it a little bit more so that it's activated quicker. Now we're just jumping from one thing to another. Let's see if we do what, like 1 second. Like, how would that feel? How would that feel? Go in here. See, that works. And now we can touch it. See, at that point we have like a quick. What happens if I do... I could still move around on it. This is actually perfect. I could move around on it, but to actually have like a collision, I need to step off and then do this. So that's nice. Right. Fade in. I need to make a fade in as well. And this is an important one. Because what's gonna happen is that it's maybe a little bit of a weird one, and I don't know if it's like okay to do it. But we have this one over here, like once we have like a collision on the area transition, and if it's enabled, then we initialize the load area. But what we're gonna change is that this is actually gonna call in the fade in. It's gonna call in the fade in, and then once the fade in is complete, it's gonna call this. So we're gonna make a little bit of a like a how would you say a loop around, like not straight away, but once the fade in is complete, then transition to the new area. And that might be a little bit weird that it's connected to a graphic and the fade in of that thing. We could also set up like a timer later. But also, uh, my tip for timers: timers are important, but for example, this timers, especially if they are regularly used, you know, it's not a single like a once thing. They will use like a CPU usage. So if you have like enemies with a lot of timers on them, you need to be careful with that, because they need to keep checking if the timer is running and if the timer is done, yes or no. And just having timers on the layout will cause, yeah, CPU usage. Not a lot, but it will add up. I had to change a lot of things in other games where I was mostly using animations actually to trigger stuff and time stuff, which feels kind of weird, but also it was better for the CPU usage in my case. Fade in, now we're gonna change the fade in time to that. Let's have to wait, and then that's 0, and then start fade. So one issue with this though, when I call the fade in from here, a fade in, listen, a fade in shouldn't be only be used to go from one area to another. It might be used to go to a cutscene, or when you go, well, maybe the game wants to show you something else. And I think when calling a fade in, the action, we need to send along an action instead of say it's a fade in. So let's just change that. It should say what type of fade in or fade out it actually is. Fade in, area change, because we might no, we might want to have like different outcomes. Let's do the area change from that one. Now from here, it's a fade in. It's a fade in for the area, not change. Area transition. So we're no longer gonna do, well, we might set the action. Let's just do this. Instance, action, but also type. And what I want to do is set the action like that. And then a type as well. That will probably be useful for later on if we tackle it like this. We might want to have different things to happen once the once that action is actually done. Fade in, area transition effect. Let's maybe do this. And that one should change the type. Now from there, this is definitely overcomplicating it. But I do feel this will be useful later on already. So you do have a fade in, and then we call that the area transition. It's gonna be 1, and it's gonna be 2, and it's gonna be this, and then this, and then do that. So from here we should check fade in is finished, and it's actually fade in. That's just a simple check to see if it all went well. Fade in finished, fade in. And now I'm gonna call a function. See, now I don't like the name of that function, transition effect. It should probably just be transition and not effect. Yes. Execute, because it's done. No, not self. We're gonna send along the type and the action. The same goes for there, and we might not even want to see if fade out's finished. Fade out, near transition. Then we could do this, destroy it. And with this one, what happens when it fades in? It should actually, I'm just gonna copy it here as well. Do that, and then, oh my god, yep, I fucked up. Because we will lose that data of the UID of this thing, and that actually determines the load area, like where we're gonna go to. So I need to store that somewhere, because on the load, now things are gonna getting complicated. On a load, it's gonna send that UID there. How can we fix this? We could store like a local variable. Shit. I need to... Now I'm thinking I should just put it in a dictionary. Like the destination point and destination area, put it in a dictionary. Fucking hell, man. It's getting there, but I need to think in my mind now, like, okay, what's the next step? Like, how this is gonna fuck it all up, and how can I unfuck it, and then actually have it work like the way I want it to work. This is maybe a bad idea, but we're gonna do it. Let's just add a key from there. Destination point. And now we have like a destination area, and then we do have maybe the, it's not, this is a bad one, destination. Am I gonna call it transition point in this transition area? Because it's mostly all called like that, right? Oh yes, I'm fucking this up for sure. I'm messing this up. We don't even need the UID anymore. That's the whole thing. We actually don't need that anymore. We only need it here. We could also put the game state in the dictionary, but we might do that later. And it's kind of nice if it's just like this one, but we don't need these anymore. So we have the point and then the area, the transition area. And that means we don't need to do this because that's already stored. So on load, it should say just go to that area. Player spawn. Area transition. See, once you change one thing, you need to change like a lot of things, and that's like the tricky part of like doing that. Just to keep track of like, okay, this we actually changed this, so game data dot and we need to get that point. And just to be sure, because it's an int, and in a like in a dictionary you can store like an integer or like a string, and here we're just saying, hey, it will probably see that number as a number. Well, we're gonna say anyway, like, hey, that data that's stored in that key, just make it a number, because we're comparing a number to a number, just for safety purposes. And now I'm afraid to put it up though. So what we could do, the on collision, it will initialize like the load area. So we touched it. So what's gonna happen is it's gonna do this. It's gonna say, set the game state to, hey, we're gonna go into transition to like a new area. We will remove this one because that's something that we don't want to happen right now. But based on the UID, we will just set this data like here that we use later, and then on transition effect, something that we will definitely rename after this. Once the fade in is complete, we are not gonna initialize it because that's something that we already did. We're gonna load it, and we don't need anything else, just load, and that is load to destination area. And this should be game data get transition area, because that's the layout that we're gonna go to. Yes, I hope this is something that somewhat understandable, like what I'm trying to do right now, because I don't know. Just to make sure, it's probably bugging out, but that's fine. I'm just gonna delete this. Never need it again. Don't delete disabled things even before you haven't tested it out yet. I don't even know if the fade in is working, and that's a nice thing now. I don't even know if it's working. So I'm just digging a bigger hole for myself. I'm just gonna change this because this is really annoying. It's no longer the effect, because the effect, it actually does more than just an effect. It's the whole transition. Fade in, so it should also be renamed here. It's not just an effect, it's actually, it does way more than that. Than just be an effect of like fade in and fade out and spawn a spite. I saved it. Let's see what the fuck it does. It it does the initialize, and then there's, let's just see, man, let's just see. Did it do something? That's really quick. I don't believe the game anymore. Did it fade in and fade out? It doesn't. It doesn't fade in, and that's due to this. I think it works. I think it works. We got a fade in and a fade out. See, it kind of looks like nicer when it does that. So at some point when that game state changes to the area transition, it needs to disable, even though it's like really quick, it needs to disable player movement, and that you can't actually do anything, and it just needs to simply disable the input from the player, so that what you don't want to have is like having that transition introduces like a lot of, or quite a few issues, I think. For example, what happens when the player during a transition says start, go to my inventory and select stuff, while the game is actually going to a new thing, and that will break it. Or what if somehow there's an enemy and that kills the player while being in a transition? Like, would you, and there's like a dead animation, but it doesn't fully complete. You still are in the transition, get to the other end, you have 0 health. So having that transition there, also that could happen when it's just instantaneously. But simply said, for the transition, you just want to pause, freeze like enemies, freeze damage, freeze anything that's on the screen, and disable like player input. And that's why we built the game state stuff, and we will check that well with the controller stuff as well later on. And then we have the like the enemy. We don't have like the enemy right now. Right. Transition is there. That works. I need to change this. So a couple things that we should also do. Because I don't think the game is gonna end up just like Zelda with the single screens, and that you move from one screen to another. I don't think that's what we want. We could do it, but I don't think it's gonna end up like that. I could see something happening where like the tree thing I was thinking about, that doesn't really like matter on the overworld per se if you don't have like that screen transition, but it would probably impact the like the design of like the dungeons, like having to open up the door and being able to see on the other side of that door, because that happens when you don't like block it off, like where you don't limit the camera movement. You could see beyond like a door, and at that point you would have to take that into account while making the levels. So there are some pros and cons in that. I don't know how to deal with it. We will probably end up with the single screen, but I kind of want to avoid that, but maybe have the overworld a little bit different than the dungeons themselves. That could probably be actually the way to go. Have that, I don't know, have smaller sections within the dungeon. That could be like an end result, or overworld is just free flow camera movement. It just follows the player. It's not limited within like the screen that you see. You can just like move around instead of like but when you're like in the dungeon, it is actually more sticking to that more that Zelda style kind of like camera movement and what you see and like how it works. But that's gonna depend on like the theme of the game and kind of like the pacing that we want. It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing, and it could be a fun thing, but it will definitely impact like how dungeons are designed. Having a free flow camera would, chances are high, would make it more intensive to make the world itself and like how everything is laid out. It will definitely have like an impact. Yes. Oh man, my neck is killing me. I don't know what it is when I'm sitting behind the computer and like doing this kind of work, but I definitely feel like my neck acting up. With that said, let's see, is there something else like a simple thing that we could do? Already like streaming for 2 hours, man. Time flies by when you do this stuff. We could mess around a little bit with the player and set up the controls and maybe have like a simple attack based on the direction that we're looking at. Maybe just for testing purposes have like the ability to shoot or like close range combat. That's gonna be a very simple thing to do. It's not gonna be a simple thing to do, but it's gonna be very simplistic. Not a complicated. We're not gonna make it something that's too complicated right now. Seeing that's also like the big question is when we look at the game, like we can move like up and down and left and right, and yes, the player is kind of moving rather quickly. Are we gonna stick with this type of movement, or are we gonna build diagonal movement as well? And if we are, also that will impact how you fight like enemies, and also it will impact the enemy movement. I think I want to stick to more like a grid type of movement and maybe be able to move diagonally. It's probably gonna be more like Link to the Past instead of this first Zelda. It shouldn't matter that much. Link to the Past doesn't have like... what I'm not gonna do if there's like diagonal movement, I'm not gonna make a sprite based on that. The sprites will just be left, right, up and down. And that's it. We're gonna keep it simple. Also for the combat, how would that work? You could move like diagonally and still have bows, and if we have something like bows solely have like horizontal and vertical. It's not like that. Because that's also not possible in Link to the Past. No. So we might have that movement, but still, like weapons are just like up and down, left and right, and that's it. Up and down, left and right, and that's it. So we do have like the player movement. We set it up like that. So what is important is, are we gonna do that in the dictionary or on the sprite itself? Interesting. I'm more inclined to maybe do this. Have direction and a text. Because that's important to know. I think a long range attack for now for the testing is maybe easier to set up. So what I'm gonna do, and we can change this later. Again, we can change everything later. We can also delete it. We can also delete it, you know. That's a nice thing. So when we do this, it should... See, when you do like diagonal movement and also have that in there as an option, that will definitely make it way more complicated. Because the thing that I'm not gonna do is have something that the left stick is for movement and the right stick is attack direction. That's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep it simple. So if I look to the left, you attack to the left. If I look to the right, you attack to the right. Up is attacking up and down is attacking down. And not up left is diagonal. You attack there, specifically there, and you shoot there. So we're gonna stick to that for now. Player, and why is it important to... I could just remove this for now because I'm not gonna focus on the gamepad right now, and the way we set it up, it's gonna be rather easy to set up multiple things. So WASD, what would be a good attack button be? I'm also gonna remove this. Is that? Player, that spawn, initialize, that's setting that stuff up. That happens before the spawn. No, is that a lie? No, that's not a lie. Player. See, that function is called player movement, and it would be nice to just call it movement, but the enemies all do have movement as well, and the bosses will have movement as well. So either way, it's probably best to just keep it as like player movement. It seems a little bit like too much, but yeah, we need to call that event sheet and that function, or that function this way. So let's just build another one that's just called player action. Player action. Yes. Player action. That's fine. Now this is a weird one because we have like the primary and a secondary, and that also says like which item do you have. Would a bow no, this makes complete sense. We're gonna stick to Zelda. You need to select the sword from your inventory to use the sword. Or we could make like a third or fourth option later. But we're gonna stick with this. Have a sword on secondary or primary. Have a bow on primary or secondary. But you need to select that in a menu. First I was thinking, well, what if you just have a sword, like the close range combat weapon, and then like maybe a block button as well, and then the items, like a bow and a sword. But that will also complicate it again, because then we need to check, like, hey, for example, if you have like a bow and a sword, you could spam those two buttons and then, you know, a double, like all the attacks. And maybe there's like another attack weapon as well, so you could do that, select that item on like that, and then you really need to classify, like, okay, you got like the primary weapons, like, oh, you got different swords, or I don't know, and then you got like the equipable items as well, and the equipable items are only usable when you're not attacking, and now we need to check that. So let's keep it simple. You got primary, secondary, it's up to you what you select. That's it. We might add, like, I want to keep the button count, the input amount also low as possible, because we could, of course, at the end make use of the other buttons as well. But that's a different story. So we have the primary and secondary for the attack, and what would be a button be for primary and secondary? I kind of like to use the arrow keys, otherwise it would be a little bit weird. Or control and shift for no, alt and shift, no, that's silly. Now you're being N and M. Also, we need to make a map. Fuck me. I will add that to the list. Because yes, we're gonna make a map at some point. We're gonna make a map. I added it to the list on the drawing. Where's my mouse? WASD? Well, I kind of like the arrow keys for now, maybe too. Because it's for testing. And it's kind of like a nice distance from like WASD and then have the arrow keys. I know it's weird. We're building a prototype. And then player movement, it's player action, and then it's the primary. And copy that one here. So now the bigger question is secondary. Do we... Yep. Already see like a small error. Because I do believe like items should be only be triggered when you press like a button instead of like holding it down. That kind of feels like okay. And we have the primary, and now the issue is like, how are we gonna deal with the different item types? Like it's probably we need to build that functionality, like what an item actually does when you use it. Because you could select a different item, like a primary. On a primary it could be bombs if we have like bombs, or like the boomerang. So do we, once we press the left arrow button, do we just say player action and call the primary? Or do we already send like data to that function of what type of item that we are actually using. No, we're not gonna do that because a bow. Look, man. Let's think aloud. For example, a bow could be primary or secondary, and either way, we probably have to call a different function from here. That's solely for that item. So are we gonna build a function for every item? Probably. Because every item could be differently. That could mean once we have like 100 items, you have like 100 functions. Not a bad thing. Primary, secondary. Could also player action. We wouldn't even have to do like the secondary and the primary, but just call the item name and have that listed here. But then it's no longer a player action, it's actually just an item action. Huh. Love it. Player action. Item. What I could do. I could make a function just called item bow. And then item bow with a param use. Let's start with that. Just for testing. But a bow does, well, maybe probably every item needs to know the player's location and the direction. But that's something that you could just call here. Item. Oh. It's a weird one to do it like that. Item bow. Item bow use. And then we really don't need the primary and the secondary, but we might need to use that later. Item bow use. Oh my god. Yes, this is already fucking everything up. I'm thinking. So for now, this is fine. Item use. Like realistically, we're gonna keep it simple. We don't have like that many items. We're gonna keep it small, just so that we can like make some good progress with this and don't get too many, don't have many things going on. And here we could just say like, hey, are you using the bow? And then based on that, actually call something. So when I do item use on either the primary or secondary, I could check the like the player data and then get that key like primary. I think it was called primary. I need to check that again. Player, where did I place that? Item primary, item secondary. I don't like the item primary and item secondary. It's primary slot. Secondary slot. Slot primary. Why is primary such a weird word? Is that the correct spelling of primary? What a weird word. Primary. Let's ignore it for now. Nope. Slot. Item primary. I don't think slot is... Well... Let's leave it as this. Could call it slot 0, 1, and then maybe later you have actually 4 items that you could use and bind by your own, on your own. It's fine now. Listen, it's fine. Slot primary, value is none. So we are making these keys in there. Once we press like, well, yeah, I know this is weird, like the left or the upper arrow, we either use the primary or secondary. And then from that function we call the primary and use. We call item use because it's an item. This could also be just moved over there. Do we need a player action? Well, maybe there's like a sound. Moving it, if it's not needed, we could just simply move that over there. That's an option. Player action. Do we need this? Question mark. Love it. And then we use the bow and the bow. The bow should just fire a projectile, and for now we're just gonna spawn something from the center of the player. So I do need to set the primary for testing already. Like, hey, you just got the bow, man. You got the bow. And here needs to be a check ammo count. The bow, I was talking about that XML file. That bow, that item, like we're gonna create a list at some point that also says like, hey, this item uses this item to be fired. Like the bow doesn't use a bow to fire, it uses arrows to fire. So we do need an item called arrows. And we need to check like, hey, you're gonna use a bow. Do you actually have like ammo to use it? And we will check the ammo count here. It doesn't matter if it's a bow or something else. Maybe we end up with a gun. But we need to somehow find out like, okay, the bow uses this item. And we need to check if we have enough to actually use this item, and that's probably gonna happen here in the item use. We could check that before that, but that might, we could check that like here, player action, but I think this is maybe a little bit more logical to do that. So we need to check the ammo count. So for now we do have like the items here, items, and we do have like the item spawner there, and the spawn point is maybe more like game related. Items, let's just is the new object, which is again a sprite. I'm gonna build it 16 by 16. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna draw a... I was gonna say a lovely red dot, but I don't like this red dot. Hardness 100, can we do that? Why does it still show transparent pixels on the side? Lovely. I lied when I said we're not gonna make art, because this is art. Just gonna draw a happy face. Happy face. I'm an arrow. It's not an arrow, it's a projectile. Item. Oh. Projectile. Because projectiles will probably function as all the projectiles in the game, and they will just spawn a sprite to show like, hey, this is how I look. So we do need to change this collision box a tiny bit. Let's just do this. And that needs to be 8. No. 10. No. 12. Yes, that makes sense. 4. It's gonna be 4. 12. This is gonna be 12. 12. There you go. And from there, behavior. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna use the bullets? The weather today is really shit. We're gonna use a bullet. That's already like a standard behavior. That just causes it to fly away. We're gonna give it a... for testing just a slow speed. And projectiles, we'll probably have some projectiles. Once a projectile spawns, it will spawn a sprite, just how it looks. This is just a collision of that projectile, and then we will store the data like the speed and acceleration and like the gravity in some location. Initial state is just enabled. We're not gonna set the angle of that bullet, because that will cause it to rotate around, and we don't really need that. It's just a collision box, it's just gonna be there. And the important part, and now a tricky part will come up. We'll just test out if the projectile works, because we do not have the for some items we need to check the direction of the player and the location of the player. So we do have like the direction there. Let's do this again. It's a weird bug. Sometimes the construct just slows down when it's like full screen. For now, we have like the left arrow pressed, it will use the primary. And the primary, we say, hey, that's the bow. So once we do that player action, it says primary use this item. That's actually, and it calls, or it pulls the data from the player data, which contains this data, like what we're using. See, this is something that we could have done here. But for now, we will keep it like this. Item, use, and then in this instance, it will say bow. Item, use, bow. And then we need the player. See, the nicest thing would be item use. Like at some point... No. We will keep it as this. See, the thing that you want to think about, like, okay, how would that work with enemies, right? Like you use somewhat like the same system. Like an enemy might have like a bow, and will it use this one, or will it use a different function, but basically with the same setup? We'll probably just use like a different function, but you could think about like, okay, what if I just make one function that functions, that works for the enemies and for the player? Could be a possible thing to do. But we're not going to do that for this one though. Do I want the system to create the projectile? In this case, yes. Oh, no, that's an interesting though. That's an interesting one. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna create the projectile on the layer and an XX. But you know what? I'm building so many functions. What if you... What if I build it like a projectile function? I know, crazy. Hear me out. We need to spawn and we also need to destroy. Let's say delete. We need to spawn projectiles and we also need to delete them. And what we also need to do is... no, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because yeah, in series, like maybe this could be useful for like everybody, but we send along like, hey, who's actually firing it, and then put that info in there. So the projectile. No, we're not gonna get. We're not gonna set the damage there. User, who used the projectile? Who is it from? Type. And then... What if we do this? Projectile. It needs to spawn one. And it's from the player, and what we're gonna do is player cb.x and y, and maybe yeah, the item type we might no, it's not a bow. We're not shooting bows. We're shooting arrows. Arrow. We're shooting a single arrow. I might change. I don't like this, so maybe this should be here and then X and Y, because that's the location. So spawn, that's projectile, we're spawning something. The player is spawning it, the player is spawning an arrow, and here's the location where the object should actually spawn at. And there's another one that we need to do, and that's actually the player direction, because we need to know, hey, this is actually the direction of the projectile. And by doing this, we might be able to use this function for enemies as well. so that once a enemy is firing a bow, it will shoot an arrow and it will basically send out almost like the same info to that function, and we use the same thing. So that will use up. So an enemy might not call this specific thing, but it will call something else. Spawn, and then we are not necessarily like making a different or say like, hey, this should be like an arrow that will come later. But let's make a couple of these. I just kind of like to make these type of notes to say like, hey, what is this function actually like receiving? So we do have like 0. That's just the action. Who is firing the projectile? And then type of projectile. Firing plus X. Firing plus Y. Yes. And then from here we know like, okay, function 3 is this. And these nodes are kind of important to do, especially later on when you're gonna change up like functions to make everything like maybe a little bit more compact and easily to change. It's kind of nice. Once you don't have this, you need to look like, okay, where is this called from? Sometimes I actually add it like, okay, this is called from like item use or from enemies. But then it's kind of easier to understand, because otherwise I would have to, if this is on a different event sheet, I would have to look first to like, okay, item bow, that's used projectile, no, that's at the order. So this is kind of easy to actually know like what's going on here, because the projectile has a type, but I could also add in like maybe from for user. Let's say from. It's a weird word to use, the from. The nice thing with the instance variables, like you could just change this and it changes that in the code as well. So that's like user might be nice. Let's just leave it there. And now we do have the direction, and this is gonna be a thing though. Yes. We need to set the angle of motion for that thing, right? And we determined that it's probably gonna be up, left, down, right. So then you need to get the decrease from that. But maybe a boss is able to shoot like stuff from other angles, from like a whole spectrum. So we need to have that ability to actually do that. Might not do it, but you know, having that option to like have like a full 360 like window to shoot projectiles. Maybe the Zelda becomes like a bullet hell type of deal during boss fights. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm just like I'm winging it. So we need to set it along like the angle, and what would be nice is if when we call the projectile that we actually do send the direction, instead of sending direction, that we do send the angle of the direction. So let's just make something in the projectile that could send back the angle that we're looking for based on the direction of the player. Yes. So get angle, and then what we're gonna do, because we do have like a few different options. Again, this could also be done and pulled from an XML instead of having. See, the nice thing, if I pull the data from an XML, I wouldn't have like all these different sub events on this event. And the nice thing is, let's show if that's actually possible. Like below here, we see like the amount of events that we have. We have like 86 right now. Let's see if this actually impacts that. Like if I remove that, it's now 85. So having all these options here, you know, adds way more events, and it's not like a bad thing. But if you do pull the data from somewhere else and don't necessarily have to do this, like, is it up, is it down, is it left, is it right? Because we could also get this situation where we say like, it's up left, it's up right, it's down left, it's down right. And then you get like way more possibilities. So you get like double the list or even more. And if you put that like in just like an XML file, like, okay, if it's left, then it's this, that's kind of nice. And then you can tweak it a little bit easier as well. I think that was a good example, but there are other things as well that could be useful, like later on like to tweak that. So what we're gonna do is, we haven't even tested like the projectile, but let's just continue on with this. What I'm gonna do is this, and then actually call a function within this function. I think I need to do this projectile, comma, get angle. And then player dot dir. So when we call, we are actually calling projectile, but for sending along the param5, we actually call a function that will get the angle that we need based on the direction that we have. So we're gonna convert like left, right, up and down to those angles. And this is gonna fuck me up because I actually don't know. Let's say like right is 0. With this I always get a picture and actually get the proper values. And now left is 0. And right is 180. We will see that soon enough. Up is 90. I'm fucking this up. I know for sure. That's 270. That doesn't make any sense. So from here spawn, and then here we could say 5. So 5 is the direction, that's the angle. So here we actually say like 5 is projectile angle. So we don't have to do that anymore in there. So we spawn a projectile, we set the user, we set the motion, and we will node spawn sprite. We will do that also on a different way. Not for now. We're not gonna fuck around with the sprites. So we shoot a projectile and is it gonna work? No. No. I don't have any faith in this. Absolutely wonderful that I completely mess up like the directions. Everything is mirrored. This is me going left, this is me going right, this is me going up, this is me going down. Everything is just at an angle. Everything is mirrored. Holy shit. So I need to move this one to there, and this one there, and this one there, this one there, and then it should work. That's fucking funny. Up, down. That feels weird. Like the movement feels weird when I press left and then up. It feels finicky, and also like the projectiles moving so slow is weird as hell. So the projectiles, let's 160. And the speed will be changed based on the type of projectile that we're actually shooting, like the arrow here, and we will get the data. We could do that in the dictionary right now, but that would be so cumbersome. Why? Oh, right. That's the problem when you use like the arrow keys. I was actually using the arrow keys to determine the direction, but it's just pressing left. Like, us being fast there. Like the sprite is just super fast right now. Maybe I want to move. Change the speed a little bit of the player. Just 160. It's already like way too fast though, but for testing. You know what? We actually did something very nice, I think. By having a single, you know, the nice thing that I like about doing stuff like this, just see where it goes. You know, just yeah, like see where it goes. Like use Zelda as a foundation for what we're building. Like I don't have any idea. Like I keep flopping between like it could be cool if it has this direction and this team, but now it could also be cool if it kind of like goes that way. And the thing that with just simply the projectiles and having the projectiles just like have this common projectile that's either from the player or from the enemy, but either way it's just gonna be a projectile. Already opens up like maybe cool things for later on, where you might be able to parry back some certain projectiles. And you know, it's just if we hit a projectile from an enemy, bounce it back based on the angle, and just change the user from player to enemy. Or you know, from enemy to player, and then it turns into our projectile. And then, you know, then we know like, oh, if this projectile is from the player hits an enemy, then the enemy actually gets hit. Or we could change like the damage as well based on that. It kind of like opens up like new possibilities that that I didn't think of before. It's not probably like that we're gonna do that, but it's kind of like, okay, if we build it like this, it opens up like new possibilities for later on, and that's kind of cool. See, we could change like the direction of like firing, and because we're not stuck in the left right up left right up and down, it's just we need to send the angle, and that's basically it. This might just be changed as well, but it's just get angle, and then we have to simply change this and then do that, and then beep pop boop pop, and then it's done. Magic. Let's have a sip of tea. It's terrible weather today, man. It feels like a Sunday. It feels like a Sunday. Don't mind it though. It's Tuesday. So, spawn. This should spawn a spite as well. It should say, I want to make the projectile a little bit faster in this case. Just one. Let's just keep it on 200. It doesn't matter. Projectiles will get their speed like later on. What I will do though is the projectile set speed. I'll just say 200. So we set it here, but this number will probably be set up based on data and the arrow or projectile type. Yes, I was thinking, I feel like I'm kind of done with maybe to do like a one final little thing for now. What we could do, is maybe just have a spy that acts like an enemy, or just, hey, this is an enemy, kill it, item spawn. Like, just have a square that's either an enemy or like a breakable object. When it's done, it spawns an item that we can pick up, and from there you would get loot tables and, you know, percentages, like chance of like getting certain items, but have something that can break, and like an item spawner, because we do have like an item spawner for more like the single pickup items, but we need to make something that will spawn like the rupees or the other type of things. So are we able to use like this item spawner? It says like item. It's is it like an enemy? Is an enemy only can spawn just one single item or more stuff? We could keep it at, on one though. And am I gonna use that one? Just the item spawner, and when something dies, let's just build something. Let's create. Let's have a. Oh, we already used that. Those things. Enemy. There you go. NRC. Why don't I just make a bigger font? Because the sprite is like super small. Art. Yes. Let's make it art. Area transition, art. That's not gonna confuse it at all. In the end, enemy. And are we gonna do the enemy types, or are we gonna do? Let's just do that from the get-go. Like, we're gonna build a family for the enemies. Enemy. Put it in a folder and have this one called fam enemy. So we have a family of enemies. Very nice. And then from there, instance variable, say which type it actually is with a text, which might come in handy later on. And this is just to well, it should also have health. We need to keep track of like health on that thing as well. And are we gonna? Well, no, we're not gonna put that on here yet. We could have added a on the family of the enemy. Put like a maybe like a boolean to say drops items, yes or no. But I think we will have that data somewhere else. So here's an enemy. A lovely enemy. For testing, we will probably make just an enemy spawner that just spawns like enemies at a certain interval for testing. But right now we just need to have the items drops, and then the enemy spawner will actually become a thing. Is it true though? Am I lying? Why not do the thing that you just said? No. Let's make it black. Let's draw a line. There you go. E. No. Look that up. Yes. Because that's gonna be an enemy spawner. There you go. And I wanna change one thing as well. The enemy spawner will just be there. Enemy spawner, enemy. Good. Just gonna change this to a lowercase for readability. No, not undo. Enemy spawner. Shit, I was thinking of something. Needs to have a timer. That's for sure. We do have like the enemy on this. Shit, what was I thinking of? We do need an event sheet. Yes, enemy. And we do need to include that to the main game one. I was thinking of something where I went like, right, that's kind of important to have. Oh shit, I can't believe that I completely forgot it now. Item, right, that was, no, it wasn't even important, it was just like a little thing that I want to do for visibility. just a small thing. It was actually like a very small thing that I wanted to do. Kind of like this, and then is this halfway? I think so. Background. Let's just call it background. Let's have this be transparent, and then have the background here. Do this. There you go. Does that line up? Yes. There you go. I'll probably change the colors a little bit. Background, that's on the background. Tile background. Let's call it ground. Ground tiles. Ground tile. No, that's gonna fuck it up later. Ground background. Just call it background, dude. Background for now. Background. It's just temporary background. Make it look like an actual prototype. Yes. Background. Oop. There you go. And do this. Yes. And well, that's gonna be scary though. You renaming the middle ground. Ah, shit. I'm not happy with the MG0 because I'm in no way I'm gonna build more I'm not gonna build more like backgrounds for the middle that are more like in the middle. It's something that I have like with Horizon Danger, but that's a different kind of beast. And we'll probably have like just the ground where enemies walk on. I'll just fucking call it the ground. But you know, that's gonna mess up with everything that we called or said like, hey, this layer ground, we need to change that everywhere where it says like MG0. Why is this bar actually like disappearing? Ground. View. Fence. Search here as well. And I think maybe on the player. See, you could use the numbers, but that's even more riskier to use the numbers of the layers, because you could move around the layers and then fuck up all the numbers. For when you decide like, oh, I do want to have something like that's below ground and up, you know, between ground and background. And then once you do that, you know, it changes the number of the ground. If I choose like layer 1, it's no longer layer 1. So that will fuck it up. So that's why I use names, but you need to know which names you're gonna use. And changing it up, you know, it's not like a big hassle. What I will do is maybe move these a little bit closer, just for testing. I kind of like the look, just for the prototype. Like, okay, have some names here, and do it like that. Maybe change this as well, because we will be looking at these squares for a long time, at least for 6 years. It's the SP. You know me. Spawn point. I should have just used done that. Spawn point. But it's already, it's spawn point. Or it's spawn point. Spawn point dot. Just for fun. Let me have some fun. And also change this one as well. Look, if I would have done this correctly, I would like use proper color code in, I don't know what the fuck. This is an item. Let's call it an ETM. No. E. T. Beautiful M. Beautiful M. No. I hate this M. I hate it. That's a beautiful M. We're missing the E. I know. I know. Not important. What were we doing again? Enemy spawner. And then I started doing the background and all this stuff. I know, man. I know. Let me think. We have the enemy spawner. We just want to spawn like an enemy on an interval. If there are no enemies, just for testing. We're not gonna make the enemy behavior right now. That's a different beast. Especially, you know, that depends on like the type of movement that we want. But the enemy, that's gonna be a beast. That's gonna be a full stream to actually make something that kind of works. Let's remove the search though, because that's gonna fuck it up. There you go. Otherwise I will be looking for like, where is it? And then it's on search and it doesn't show it. So we had the projectile, and this is something that we will move later to, again, move later to a different event sheet, because it needs to be accessible for the enemies as well. And it is accessible for the enemies, but it should be like from a common thing. You will see. So we have the spawn point, we have the enemy spawner, main game. What we will do for now is just use the initialize for all this stuff. Just for each enemy spawner, we'll just start a timer. Spawn. And I don't think the spawners will just constantly spawn like enemies when we're in a game. It shouldn't even spawn. It shouldn't even. Spawners are probably just use once. Like, hey, this enemy spawner spawns this type of enemy. And then once you spawn it, it gets deleted. Or it doesn't do anything unless we move back to the screen again, or when we are between distance. You know, that's important for like what I was talking earlier about, like how the movement you know, works, and the layout of how we navigate over the world, the overworld. But for now, let's just make it start a spawner, because for testing we need just a regular interval of enemies, and it would be a hassle to move back and forth between like the screens to constantly like attack an enemy, see if it works, yes or no. But we need just an enemy over there. So let's just say 3 seconds, spawn on a regular interval, and then you know, once that is done, just here enemy spawn. I need to think about my neck. I don't know why my neck is fucking up. Did I say spawn? Yes. I gave it a tag spawn. So on spawn, what I'm gonna do, we're just gonna compare the value of the enemy count and if it's equal to 0. So if there's no enemy spawner, spawn another object and then spawn an enemy. On layer, ground. It's kind of like a workaround, but at the end we do need an enemy spawner, something that spawns an enemy within a certain vicinity maybe, or just on that location. Again, it definitely depends on like what type of game it's gonna be. Yes, it depends on that. So spawn an enemy if there's no enemy. So it's gonna spawn within 3 seconds. So let's just test it out. I think I placed the enemy already like on that one layout. Nope. What did it do? Let's check the debug. Because I also see something else that's funky happening. Did you see that little square? Suddenly I like the look of this. Just adding just some text to it. Just to show you what it is. The enemy spawner, oh. There's an enemy though. Is it below it? It's below it because the enemy spawner is on the top layout. Disable, because we should not be allowed to mess around with those layers. There's an enemy. And it will stay as one enemy. With the player though, the add slot. Right, it's not gonna show that anymore in this thing because we changed this. Instead of item, we changed this to slot. And now it should probably display the bow again. The bow. No, I did not want to go to this area. I made a mistake placing those areas there. And then go here. Wonderful, pick up item and go here. Is that an item? Yes, that's actually the bow. Look, we don't have an inventory. If we had an inventory, I would actually pick up the bow and then shoot. Going down is a little bit finicky, but that's just the way how it is set up right now. So we have an enemy, and that means we can kill the enemy. We can kill it. Enemy set value. I know I said the health already. So here's an important thing. Let's just do 100. Let's just do 100. That's easy. That's easy to understand. And let's just say the type for now, it's a goblin. Oh my god. That's all gonna change. It's not important now. Just ignore it. It's not gonna be fantasy. We don't know yet. We're just building something. The type, goblin, and then health. That's it. That's all it says. Normally the spawner would determine like what type of enemy is being spawned, because we would simply say, hey, spawn this type of enemy in there, or we, you know, that's a nice thing that we could do. Either you make just different enemy spawners, or you say like enemies, you got like different type of enemies, and you say like, well, you group them up, spawn one enemy from this group, and that's it. But there's just other ways to do it. What I don't necessarily like is have to type in what type of enemy it actually spawns. But you know, at the end, like if you have to make so many screens, it would be kind of nice to change the graphic. What I actually would normally do, and probably will do, is have a layout with all the enemies on them, like here, or all the enemy spawners. Just have the enemy spawner, set it up, set the name, and then have like an animation of that enemy type, and that it makes it clear this is an enemy spawner and it spawns this type. So we can just change the animation, set the name in, then it has that look, and then from there we kind of like from an area just like copy and paste from like the row of enemies, like, oh, this enemy should be here, here, and here, and there, and then it's actually like an enemy spawner, instead of having to do that like here. Makes it rather complicated, but also in the end maybe easier. I don't know. You could also build individual enemy spawners just for each enemy, but that would mean making all kinds of sprites for those enemies, and then different objects for those enemies. So in the end, this is probably the best thing to do. So now we do have a little thing that we should think about. Because this whole thing about the enemy and the enemy spawner was to actually test out like dealing damage to an enemy. Let's move these out of the way, or like, yeah, let's move these below the player. Yep. So we don't touch them when we walk around here. Let's move these. Let's have these here. I don't know why it should be. Why this feels better. Let's have this one here, in case when we test out actually picking up an item in an inventory, selecting the item, and you know, it's close, like pick it up, select it, and then shoot, because that's something that we probably need to test out like quite a few times. Sorry. We have the projectile, we shoot the projectile. And now we need to... Let's build it in the player first, but this is gonna end up in just a more like a global event sheet. Projectile. On collision with another object. And that could either be a player, and here's the tricky part. We could no, this is fine. Family enemy. And what we need to do though is projectile compare That's interesting though. What I was gonna do, well, I'll show you what I was gonna do. Because we do have a type and you know where it's from. So if we have collision, a projectile has a collision with the enemy, and we need to check, is that projectile from the player? Because the player projectiles should actually damage the enemy, right? But you know, we could also say, well, projectiles, if it's either from the player or from an enemy, like, will let's do that over again. A projectile from an enemy, could a projectile from an enemy actually hurt another enemy? Like, that's something that you could play around with, right? Could they damage each other? But I will just open up like a whole box of other possibilities that you don't want to touch, but you know, that's a possibility. Or do you have some, like in a dungeon, like certain traps or like turrets that shoot something? Will those turrets also be able to kill enemies? Yes or no? Like, will they get damage from like the environment or whatever? So that could also be like an option that we set on or off based on like difficulty. I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, but it's kind of nice to have that. Again, it's kind of nice to have that option to change that up later on based on what we see happening and if it's cool or not, or if it's something that is like easily breakable, you know, or can be like gamed a little bit. Again, that's the nice thing with having the projectile being like, hey, there's just projectile, but then we need to check if it's a projectile from a player, yes or no. Because this projectile, when we shoot as the player, the projectile should not hit us. Our projectile should not be able to hit us ourselves, right? That would be weird and shitty, and also that could be a little bit finicky when we shoot like an arrow from like the player's body and then it will hit us. Nothing should happen. So for now, projectile on collision with player CB. Is the user player? Is it not equal to deal damage? This could also be placed here, but we might want to have some other checks in here as well to make sure that it works. Projectile, is it on collision with the enemy? Is it from the player? Then deal damage. Did we give like a damage number to the projectile? I don't like this number. Not right now though. Sometimes you just hear like the same song over and over again, especially with the lo-fi stuff. Where is the projectile? There it is. Is a projectile an item? Yes. I know. I didn't put the damage on here because we're gonna do that now. I'm just gonna write damage. I actually didn't want to do that right now because that could be set up here. And let's do 50. So what happens here, what I'm thinking of is we're setting the damage here. We could also ignore that. Ignore setting the damage here, but we'll leave it in. It doesn't matter. We could pull the data from somewhere else until like the collision actually happens with the projectile. But we'll set it here, and now it's set to 50. We will pull the data and then set it just at, yes, let's keep it consistent. This will get changed. The damage will be determined based on the projectile that you're firing, like the type. And because that's also the type of projectile, then we pull it in. And then once it hits, it's that. The nice thing with the damage is with the way it's gonna be set up, we could actually determine like the damage, like, oh, are you playing like a normal mode or hard mode, and then change the damage output based on like the difficulty, instead of like just saying like this. That's what we are gonna work towards do. Same for enemy health and all the other stuff. That's my goal, right? To have like difficulty. I know that's gonna complicate things a little bit more, but it's doable. It's doable. That's gonna bite me in the ass. No, it's not like a big issue. So we set the damage here to 50. That means we need to hit the enemy like twice. The fam enemy that has like health. The health is set during the spawn. So once it has collision to the enemy and the user from the projectile is the player, then enemy guess what? We're gonna make a function. Enemy for now. Am I gonna make a param for health and a subtract? I fucked that up. There might be an add health or subtract health. And from here we do need to do one important thing, and that's actually like enemy. We based on the enemy we need to pick by evaluate, and the enemy fam enemy dot UID is equal to, so we're gonna change the whole thing now, because we need to know which enemy we're actually talking about. So this turns into 1, this turns to 2, and from there we just move this up there. We could also well, we'll probably have to, every time when we do something with the enemy, actually show which enemy we're talking about. So that means with player, once we do this call function, enemy fam enemy, the UID, and then health, and then subtract, and then projectile damage. And from here, what we also need to do is actually call function that's based on if a projectile gets destroyed on hit though, but projectile delete. And yes, I'm making this way more complicated than it should be, but this is how I operate. This is how I operate. It's just, that's just it. Projectile is equal to function delete or remove. That should be good as well. Why do we do this? Oh man, that's gonna be... Because we also need to destroy the sprite that's connected to that. And the sprite is probably in a container. I'll explain the container like later on. If we are actually gonna use containers. I haven't messed around with that too much. What you could do is have like an object here, and you do have like containers, and it's like you could add something to a container, and once if it's added to a container to a thing like this, once it's get like made or destroyed, it will automatically destroy this or add the stuff, create the stuff that's within that container. Have I used that before? Maybe to like a certain extent, but I kind of like to have that control over what is actually being added to a certain thing and not in a container. To me, visually, it doesn't like properly explain. It says what it does, but I don't have like much control over it. It's, I don't know. For now though, for here, when it gets deleted, does it get deleted though? Is delete the proper thing? Because when a projectile actually hits something, it needs to, you know, the sprite actually needs to show something, or like a particle needs to be spawned to show you have hit a thing, like a sound needs to play. And once that is done, it's probably deleted, or during the delete, a projectile or particle is like spawned, and that's it. You know, that's good. That's good. For now, just destroy it, because nothing is happening. And this is the collision. This is not the actual particle. This is the collision of that particle. Not the particle, the projectile. So we delete it. Once it has collision with an enemy and the user is from the player. So that's just so that enemy projectiles won't hit other enemies. Just to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because we're using like a singular projectile. And we're not like making tons of projectiles. It's just, this is just to collect the collision box of a projectile. Once that happens, the enemy, a function is called enemy with the UID to know, hey, we just hit this enemy, this specific enemy with a UID. We're gonna call health, subtract, and then subtract the projectile damage. Because for the enemy, it doesn't matter anymore which projectile it actually was. That's not important. It's just, hey, I got damage, and that's it. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't care which projectile it is, unless you make it very complicated and it's more about, it would only be important, and you know, then you can change it. And again, our goal is to not make it too complicated, or our goal is to make it simple. This doesn't work when we want something that an enemy is, for example, has a certain resistance to certain projectiles or attacks. Because from there you need to make something like, okay, this enemy has resistance for this type of projectiles and for this and this and this, and get more damage from this and this and this. And that's just too much for now. And that's something that you would actually, you know, we could call a function to change the amount of damage that we actually send based on those type of things. So we can adjust that if that's something that we do. We're not gonna do it. But I could see a case of a fire arrow dealing more damage. But at that point, it's a fire arrow, and then that deals just more damage. Right? It will work out. But we'll send the damage and subtract that from the health. And the projectile, it also, a function is called delete. Might change that to on impact or on collision as a param instead of delete. But for now we're just using a simple like delete, because at some point we need to call something like hey to delete it. Now you might wonder like, why are you not putting delete here? Because that's something that we could do. Like just simply say like destroy it here. That's simply because we need to delete the projectile also when it hits the player, right? So now we have a single thing to delete the projectile instead of like having to destroy it here and here. But you might say like, okay, why don't you place the destroy here as well? Well, maybe that projectile has a certain sound on a certain impact and a certain particle when it hits a certain thing. And that's something that we might build here. And otherwise we get like a whole list here and a whole list of events here, simply for the collision on the player and the enemy. Because we're also gonna build a collision with walls and maybe also with breakable objects. So that's why we do it like this. Otherwise we need to update this list for the sounds and update this event for like the sound. So now it's simply here. Play sound, spawn particle, and those will also be functions that we call then. So that's why we set it up like this. Yes. And here, what we're gonna do, have another palm on there underneath the health. We call the subtract from the enemy, and basically what we will do is subtract from health 3. I guess it's 3. It should be 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Subtract. And this one should be add health. Why would you do add health for enemies? I don't know. Maybe you make like a behavior that the enemy can actually heal itself. Or you have like a boss is able to heal enemies, or a certain enemy type is able to heal surrounding enemies. So that's why we have the subtract and the add health to the enemy. And what we're gonna do though is have a small check. Yes. Enemy. And what we're gonna send along again is just simply the UID and function. Well, we could just type this out. Health. And just have a health check. Also after the have a health check after the subtract and the add. Health check. That's 2. That's 2. And we send the we need to check again, like, okay, we send along the UID of that enemy just to make sure we're talking about that enemy, because this will be used for like all the enemies. So that's why we have to check over there. And what we're gonna do by the check is that because it's subtracting or adding, simply we need to check for that enemy. We need to check the health. Is it less or equal than 0, or is the health actually in this case greater than 100? And why would I do that? That's a good question. Because just call it destroy. Because if we subtract health from the enemy, and if it's below 0, that means the enemy died. And now we call this one again. Instead of that, we call destroy. And we can remove this one. And for the sake, we will just say fam destroy. And there will be more fancier stuff that happens when we destroy like an enemy based on the enemy type and what it is. What we're probably gonna do for the enemies is we're gonna call this destroy. At the end, we're gonna end up with maybe like an animation in place. We might delete the collision box, but have that sprite of the enemy, because the collision box won't have the sprite of the enemy, like how the enemy looks, but we will place it over it. Have during the destroy, have like an animation play and a sound play and maybe particles of that enemy actually dying. But for now, it's like this. We just need to simply destroy like the collision. So if it's below, destroy the enemy. And also I don't want to max out the health. So what if there's like a boss or like an enemy or some way for enemies to heal themselves? It shouldn't go over 100, the max. Node change 100 to the actual maximum amount based on enemy type. So that 100 will be changed to like we will pull the data like, okay, this enemy, the enemy type, what is the maximum amount of health for that enemy type? If it's above that, set it to the maximum amount. So here we will just say like, hey, set value health to 100 or like the maximum amount, so it doesn't go over that. That check could also again could be placed like on the here just to check like, okay, we could have like the same check here, like is it above the max, and I set it to the max. But yeah, it's kind of nice. It's a check. It's the same check for either if it's lower or above that. We could, no, we couldn't do like an else. An else could, well, this could be done like, is it below that, or else check if the health is above like 100. That might also work as well. I don't know why I would do that. Because this also works, I think. Did we forget anything? I don't know. An enemy spawn just because, you know, it's not on the timer, and it will just keep spawning. It will just keep spawning. In that interval of like 3 seconds to test out. Now here's a moment where I would actually maybe have some like sound effects also play as well, just to make that function. And I will take a note. I will try to take a mental note of that, just to have some simple sound effects files to play once we like fire or like have a hit, just so that we know, okay, stuff is happening, stuff is being hit. To know like that's actually like happening, something is happening, a little bit of feedback. I do always have like the same kind of folder like for sound effects that I made in Fami Tracker, and use those for like most of the prototypes, just some basic sounds. It's always good. because I am not gonna fuck around with sounds right now during this phase. It's gonna be tricky though, because to me it always feels like, oh, right. I do need some animations. I do need this to actually make it work the way how I want it to work. But if I start like mixing around, like normally I would do this, and then at some point it starts to kind of like, I need some visuals, and then I start making that, but then it becomes like the back and forth, like making visuals, making audio, making this and this. This time I'm really trying to go as far as I can without touching that. Just make the functionality, which is kind of nice. But I do need some sound effects also to make that function for sound effects. Because there are multiple ways to do that. And again, that XML file might come in handy also for that, or a XML file for that. I like XML files with Construct 2. I use that for Horizon Danger for a lot of things. Started doing that like 2 years ago. And it definitely changed up like the way how the game works. I kind of like seeing this. The items, like, of course they don't show what type of items they are. We don't see that. Like the inventory might be, maybe we should just make a simple inventory that's not dynamically built, but something that we just call over the UI, and you know, so that we can do select something. There are multiple ways to do that. And yeah, so if we move here, I like to fade in and fade out, man. That changes up like the transition to like a new screen. It feels, the timing and like how it looks, that will change, but not having like an instant switch, less confusing. Like we don't need loading, and I don't think we need any loading even when like those areas are like bigger. I do sometimes build, and it's gonna sound weird, I do sometimes build fake loading screens. I know. Just to make sure, like, hey, it could go like bam, like into the game, but just have a loading screen where you set up stuff to make sure like everything is set up to have like a little check, but also just have like a small breather moment. Not like have a loading screen of like 10 minutes, but just a brief loading screen. Just show like a key visual, or have something there instead of just like having that instant. It's nice, but yeah, sometimes you just need a small break. What else? I think that's already like a lot. Man, this is the thing, man. I like doing this stuff, and I could keep doing like for the whole day. Because now I'm like, okay, I could make the enemies. I could also make the arrow counter. Like that should subtract ammo for my inventory. We need to pick up like that item and then have the selected item. We could pick this up and then it just goes into our primary slot, like the bow, once we pick that up. Maybe building like the save file, like a menu would also be good. Like because the game is like small right now, maybe it would be good to actually do that. Have a menu and then have like 3 save slots like Zelda. Because we need to store the data somewhere, and we don't keep track of a lot of stuff right now. So it might be wise to just build something to actually do that, like delete save, make save based on the save slot, and store it. That would also mean making a menu, and that's the inventory is also a menu. just going over like what would be like a thing to do. Because yeah, if we need to make a menu anyway, like a start screen, screen. Fuck me. We need to make that. There are multiple ways to make menus. Menus are tricky. The nice thing is it's not as complicated as having to make a multiplayer, like a local multiplayer menu for 4 players. Now it's just 1 player. And I do want to keep things limited. I was actually thinking about the game like not having any text in the game. No text at all. So we don't have to deal with translating text. But just have no text. It's all audio visual. I was thinking about that. That might be like an interesting thing to try out. Like no text at all. In the menu though, but just have that. Because if I have to jump in, like also being able to translate menus and make that dynamic and do that, not impossible. But yeah, that would require a lot more. That would require a little bit more time. Do I need to take a note? I'm gonna take a note on this piece of paper. For the next time. Ammo. It might be good to I might have to off stream fix the stuff for the XML file. I think it's an XML that we're gonna use. Because we do need that. Once that is set up, it's gonna be fun to mess around with that and pull data from that. And that will, you know, once that is set up, we have to change a couple like functions, like the enemy health, and also like the items. But then we can actually develop that a little bit further, like evolve that stuff that we have. And that's also important for like the ammo. Enemy behavior. We need to think about that. Menu stuff. And menu stuff is also, I don't know if I'm gonna make the same type of menu that I use in HD. I don't think I will. Menu and save states. Save states is important. It would be cool when we pull up like a menu here, save the game. And my idea, what happens when you save a game, it will keep track of everything that you collected. It won't, what we're not gonna do is have, for example, that enemy is there. I have the ability to save the game, and then when you continue the game, you will end up in this exact position, and like everything that's on the screen, like that's there, wouldn't be that complicated. No, it's complicated to build that, but it's not a lot of data that you need to keep track of. But my idea is just you save the game, and based on that area where you are, each area will have like a spawn point, just the yellow one that you see here, and you spawn near that. So that spawn is kind of like a safe haven type of deal within the area where there are no enemies, no items, maybe something to heal yourself or whatever, but it's gonna be like a safe place within that area, and you always go there. Unless you're in a dungeon, you will start at the spawn of a dungeon, and again the spawn of the dungeon, no enemies, because that will just help out so much with the like saving the game, because otherwise you would have to keep track of like all the items are on the screen, like all the like the position, like the particles that are on the screen, like the enemy position, the enemy health. That's just gonna be a hassle. Would be cool to have, but that's just way too complicated. So we're gonna use like spawn points, like save points on the map, and that's just the way it is. That's just the easy thing, because it's man, if you need to keep track of like the projectiles as well, like where they are at, because that's what you say when you do like a quick save or like a normal save state, you need to also do that. Not impossible, but the more stuff that you add, the more stuff that you need to keep track of. Then like during the loading, you need to add stuff, spawn stuff, and it would require more functions, and I would have to maybe rebuild those functions as well. Something to keep to keep in the back of the mind. But no, we're gonna do the first option. Yes. The menu. Another thing would be just like have the dungeon set up, and then like the map. Wait, I do want to have like a map. The nice thing is, if we build everything based on a grid, we would have like we would be able to make a similar type of map based on like the Metroid kind of like map. Like, okay, you're just in this grid section. The map is not gonna be detailed based on like the visual style, but just more like the Metroid-esque, like the squares. That's the easiest thing to do, and even then you would still be able to, well, maybe place markers. We could do that. That's I did that for another prototype. Like have a grid-based map just to show where you are, which area, maybe solely show the map of that area, or being able to cycle through those. But the map will come up when we build like the menu as well. Go to inventory, select map, go to map, check map, go back. It requires some stuff. That also requires the menu stuff. Control scheme. We need to build something for the control scheme, because now we have the control set up solely to control the player. But what happens when you press start or select to go into a menu? Like, if that menu is laid out over the actual game and not just a separate menu, that means you would have different game paths, events. So it would be wise to have like a control scheme to say, well, currently you are on this control scheme, that's player or menu, inventory or map, and based on what you press, something happens based on that control scheme. And that will also help out during area transitions, where you say control scheme none, so there's no input possible because it doesn't call the player input. Control schemes is probably one of the... When we build the menu, we are gonna touch the control schemes or control type, like what's going on. And now we need to change that as well. So probably work out the controls a little bit better, and then make the menu, because those two are connected to each other. And the menus, just make a start, save. It's kind of weird to think about like save states, but it's probably important to, or smart to do that now, just to see like how difficult it actually is. Yes. Is there anything else? The inventory stuff. It's already like a whole list. I got the like the ammo stuff. We need to subtract and add. Did we actually do that? Inventory, player, spawn. item use, bow, player action. Yeah, right. So we're not like removing arrows, like the type of projectile. So ammo is indeed the thing that we need to build, and that's also yeah, like to check ammo count. Like this one is important. Check ammo count for the bow or for items that you use if you actually have like the, let's say, the currency that you need to use that item. Boy, man, there's a lot. You know, that's a nice thing. It's a funny thing, like how suddenly okay, this is working, but now actually we need to do all of this stuff to actually make it work and connect stuff as well. It's fun. I like this. I like this stuff. I like to think over this, but I do think I need to because yeah, all the tests are here are like big things. Big things. Big things. They're all big things. Let's, well, I saved this. I saved this as well. Let's close this. I think that's yeah, that's gonna do it, because if I touch something else now, it's gonna be like another hour, which is another problem, but also need to take a small break. Need to take a small break. That's gonna do it. I'm having fun. I'm having fun doing this. I think this is kind of fun to change it up with the regular playing games on the stream. Again, like the Black Mesa Zen is still on the list to finish, and that's the only game that I haven't finished yet that I booted up. And I don't know if I will pick up a game this week. Maybe this week is just gonna be this. Chill out. I think it's very chill. So I hope it's enjoyable, and if it's not, maybe it will start to become enjoyable. You just need to find out. This will be, the previous one is also uploaded on YouTube. If there are like any questions, do let me know. I don't know, in the next stream or like in the comments over there. Yes, I'm gonna chill out a little bit. I'm gonna chill out more than this. This is chill. Although my neck though, I know, I need to check my posture. Maybe next time I need to stand up for a little bit. Again, let me know if there are any questions or if there's like feedback. And with that said, have a nice day, y'all. I won't be back tonight. Nope, I won't be back tonight. I will probably be back tomorrow, and I will try to make sure that maybe the like the external file stuff is like set up, because that will open up some cool things. See you all later. Take care. Have a nice day, and bye.